Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, it's trade season time. The Raptors, they have a phenomenal team this year, their second seed in the Eastern Conference, and it's been a bit quieter around the NBA than it was certainly compared to last year's whirlwind when it seemed like the whole league got traded, but the Raptors, some possible deals have been brought up. And the big name is Jrue Holiday right now, talking in Raptor world.
Absolutely, Ben. Like I said, it's disappointing, I think, for the league, given how ratings have been down this season. I'm surprised they're not drumming up some random trade scenarios in order to generate just excitement around the league. But there is excitement in Raptor fandom because Jrue Holiday, he is a stud. And if you're not familiar with his game, he's a fantastic defender. He's incredibly strong for his size. He would definitely be an asset on the team. But, Ben, we're going to have to break down what the Raptors would possibly have to do to engage in these trade talks. Would we even be willing to compromise any of the assets that we have on our team?
Yeah, most definitely. And the Jrue Holiday trade has been brought up by SB Nation. They wrote a nice article on the Raptors sort of trade season and what they're looking for. And I believe Zach Lowe brought it up as well, the Raptors possibly being intrigued with Jrue Holiday. And the trade that's being thrown out there now is Serge Ibaka and OG Anunoby for Jrue Holiday. And Jrue Holiday is a former All-Star. He's one of the best defending guards in the league. You can shoot it. He would be such an asset for the Raptors. But that, even though Serge Ibaka is a free agent at the end of the season, that's a huge haul, in my opinion, that we'd have to give away to bring in Jrue Holiday. We're in a position where we have Norman Powell and Fred VanVleet.
It's hard to even tease this trade because I know how stirred up people are going to get when they're watching it, thinking that we would entertain such a situation, Ben. I mean, we'd be giving up our legitimate big, right? We don't even have Marc Gasol playing for us currently. Even if he was healthy, which we can't necessarily bank on, we get rid of our only backup center, and then we're relying on Chris Boucher and possibly Rondae Hollis-Jefferson to lead us into the finals. The one thing that I think that we need is a piece to bring us legitimately in contention or past the Milwaukee Bucks. And so if we're sacrificing size, regardless of how good the guard is that we bring in, I think we're making a harder case that we would beat the Milwaukee Bucks. And that, to me, that's why this trade just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, for sure. If you look at Jrue Holiday, the player, he is a guy that will be an ideal Raptors guy. He can shoot the three, he can defend, and he's a guard. He's a guy that can pass, dribble, shoot, all that sort of stuff. But we have players at that position where we don't need that hole filled. We have Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell fighting for minutes back and forth this season. Obviously, Fred's been the continuous starter. Norm's been in there when Fred's been injured and Lowry's been injured. But the wing off-ball guard position is kind of filled for the Raptors right now. And even Terrence Davis is looking to get more minutes. And obviously, no one's touching Kyle Lowry's starting point guard position. So although Jrue Holiday would be a huge asset and arguably an upgrade over Fred and Norm right now, just in terms of where they're at in their careers.
Definitely
Norm
an upgrade, I would say.
Yeah, Jrue Holiday is very established. And even as well as they've been playing, it's tough to argue that it wouldn't be smart to maybe do a one-for-one there just for the season. But the fact that we have to give up, and I know a lot of people are low on him right now, OG Anunoby, who's still only 22 years old, still rocking scarf striker and locking up other teams, even though he's struggled a little bit on the offensive end. He's still, besides Marc Gasol, probably our best defender on the roster, and stretches the floor and has so much potential. And Serge Ibaka, who we've been saying it for the past few years now, he's been coached by Nick Nurse, having the best season of his career, scoring at such a high level, especially over the past month. I think just in terms of our roster makeup and just how OG and Serge fit with our current roster, it doesn't really make sense for this move to happen, despite how good Jrue Holiday is.
But you know what? Again, I'm trying to frame any trade scenario in the context of we want to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, because I think our team as is, right, current status Toronto Raptors should be able to win a series against any other team in the East, right? I could say that with confidence. Playing against the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm not so certain that in a 7-game series that they're going to win every time, right? Or even that they'll win 50% of the time. So it would be really hard. I think that it would definitely be an upgrade to bring in Jrue Holiday, and I'd be willing to sacrifice any wing or guard guy because of what you said, his mold and his ability to fit in really well with the Toronto Raptors team and to literally come in and be the second best player at the position 1 through 3, right? Because I would say Siakam's either 1 or 2. He's not better than Kyle Lowry, but any other player, I would say he would be probably an improvement over. But the issue is, it's exactly what you said. We're giving up Serge Ibaka, which is such an integral piece of this team, and especially come the Milwaukee series when they're such a physically imposing team, so much taller. They're going to out-rebound the Raptors. I just don't see who we would replace him with, because Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is just, he's not going to cut it in that series, I don't think. And Chris Boucher, he's been amazing. He's just too thin. He won't be able to box out. So what about this, Ben? If it was to not involve Serge Ibaka, and you kind of just sounded off on your opinion here, but if there was some sort of scenario involving, let's say it was OG and Norm, maybe some fillers, would you do that?
That's tougher for me too, because I look at Norman Powell and Fred VanVleet as guys that should be on this team for the long haul. They're guards that are entering the primes of their career, and you can make an argument that they could potentially be better than Jrue Holiday. Maybe not this year, just because of how established Jrue is, even though the stats are comparable this season. But in coming years, you can make a solid argument that Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell, with the trajectories they've been on, are going to be better than Jrue. But in a win-now move, it makes sense to take Jrue over one of those guys, even though the way Fred played in the playoffs, especially against the Bucks last year, the more I think about it, the more it hurts me to sort of say that. And OG on top of it, to move two of those young potential pieces, I don't know if it really makes sense as a win-now move. I don't think it moves the needle so much to where we say, hey, we're guaranteed going to beat the Bucks if we make this trade. And OG Anunoby, giving him up, I'd make an argument he's our best defender on Giannis Antetokounmpo for this season. Just in terms of his size, his length, his mobility, he's not a guy I'm trying to give up if I'm trying to stop Giannis. Him on the front lines against Giannis, then Gasol behind him, I think that's our biggest asset in terms of trying to beat the Milwaukee Bucks right now. So that would be a really hard sell for me, Ryker. And in terms of the point where you brought up with Serge Ibaka, losing him in a potential trade, I'll throw this back at you because I'm more high on the OG Anunoby side and not wanting to lose him. Would you be interested in maybe making this deal if we got a guy like Derek Favors back, where we fill that hole at the center position, or is this just a huge no from you?
You mean if we're really starting to add players to this trade situation, like if we add in Derek Favors and Jrue Holiday, and then we also add some guys on the Raptors side?
Yeah, let's assume we throw in Stanley Johnson. The Pelicans are really high on OG and Serge. They're willing to give up Derek Favors. Would you be interested if it fills that hole as a backup center?
I'll tell you what, I'd be interested, but now the next implication is, what's our long-term strategy? Because now we're really saying that this could be a possibility. We're not completely killing our depth in the power forward center position. I don't think Derek Favors is even comparable to Serge Ibaka in terms of offensive prowess, but size-wise, he's fine. But now we're inheriting a guy that has 3 more years on his contract. He's close to the max, and I'm talking about Jrue Holiday here now. And we're still looking to sign Fred VanVleet to probably a lot of money. We've both, sort of figured that it's going to be in the $20 to $25 million range, and looking at Giannis a summer from now, right? If we're also looking to make a play in the long term, I don't know, and it really starts to become real with the Jrue Holiday trade, I'd have to say probably not, to be honest with you, because then it comes down to, you're right. Is it definitely a win now move? I think that's a maybe, right? But then we're definitely giving up some futures, and you're right. I don't know. I'd be hard pressed for this trade. I want to keep it interesting on this podcast to say, yeah, definitely, but I'd be hard pressed to pull trigger on a Jrue Holiday trade.
Most definitely. And the more we've sort of talked about it, the less intrigued I am, especially when you compare him to Fred VanVleet. Because Jrue Holiday's averaging 20 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, shooting 35% from the three-point line, which is solid numbers. The three-point percentage could be higher, but his real asset, his most valuable skill, is his wing defense, and he's a bit undersized, so he couldn't guard a guy like Giannis, but he defends at a very high level, an all-NBA defensive level, so 20.6 assists. But if you look at a guy, Fred VanVleet, right now, at 25 years old, and Jrue Holiday, he's a couple years older. I don't have a specific age in front. 30 years old. So I just pulled that up. So for a guy that's 5 years younger, Fred VanVleet's averaging 18 points, 7 assists, 40% from the three-point line, and does do a really solid job. Is a little bit smaller, but does a really solid job on the defensive end as well. So in terms of Fred VanVleet's fit, the chemistry and all that, I think even though Jrue in a vacuum, I think is an upgrade right now, I'd be hard pressed to even give that role that Fred VanVleet has currently to Jrue Holiday, and giving up the young assets, giving up Serge Ibaka, it doesn't really make sense, right?
The last point that I will bring up, though, which sort of came to mind, is that if we were to keep Fred VanVleet in this trade, right? Mm-hmm. If he wasn't part of this deal, and we're also able to sign him, then we're looking at Siakam being sort of the future of the NBA. We lock in a guy like Fred VanVleet, who also we're expecting to continue to do big things for this team. We have then we'd have 2 years with Jrue Holiday, and then potentially keep Lowry around, depending on what his sort of, I guess, thoughts are towards the Raptors, how much money he gets. I don't know. How much longer does he have left in his contract? 1 season or 2 seasons?
Yeah, he's 1 year after this year. He signed that extension.
1 year after this year. Then we would be a very guard-heavy team with one sort of tall, do-everything player. Right? Is that model not similar to the KD Warriors team, right? Obviously different when you have Steph Curry, one of the greatest shooters of all time. You could make an argument for the same thing about Klay Thompson. But at the end of the day, they didn't have any huge players on their team. They had sort of an anchor, a defensive anchor in Draymond Green, but I'm sure we could find that somewhere around the league. But they basically played small ball with one tall, lanky guy. If we had a starting lineup with Jrue Holiday, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Pascal Siakam, and then found one defensive anchor, could that not be a team that makes a legitimate push?
I think that's a fair point to bring up, but you look at the sizes of those players. Steph Curry, he's about 6'3", I believe, 6'4". Klay Thompson, he's a bigger wing, a taller shooting guard. Then they're paired with KD, because you're making the Siakam-KD comparison. They have Draymond Green, who's one of the best post defenders in the league, he was when they were going through that run, despite his size. And then you have a bigger wing like Andre Iguodala. Right now, we'd be running Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry, who we saw it in the Sixers series last year. Their height can be an issue when the threes aren't falling like they have been this season and like they were in the Bucks and Warriors series. So that's something we have to watch out for right now. And then Jrue Holiday, even though he's a phenomenal defender, the size isn't really there either. So we'd be running Fred VanVleet at 6'1", Lowry at about 6'1", Jrue Holiday at 6'3". That's a very small backcourt. Even though they can all hold their own in the post, that's a lot smaller when you compare it to the Warriors, who have Curry, Klay, who are bigger than those guys, but still, we could argue as smaller guards per se, even though Klay does have some height. But they also had Iggy, KD, who's about a 7-footer, and then Draymond Green, who were bigger guys. So that's a tough comparison right there. I think the defense, the three-headed dragon of point guards, could hold their own, but definitely would be an issue, I think, against some teams.
Fair enough, Ben. And so let's wrap it home here. The final verdict on a Jrue Holiday trade, I'm saying no. We don't really have the pieces that we'd want, or that they would want, that would make this trade happen. What do you think?
I'm in agreement, and the Pelicans have said they'd be hesitant on making a move. They're trying to win now, and you could argue that this is still a win-now move because it would open up more minutes for Redick, and then they'd fulfill that center position that they've been kind of struggling at, and OG is a wing defender, but yeah, it doesn't really make sense for the Raptors, so I'm not in agreement with it, even though I like Jrue Holiday, the player. But let's know what you guys think. You're the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. We're going to have a lot of content coming for you guys regarding the trade deadline, all of our thoughts and what the Raptors should do, but it's an interesting rumor to sort of start this next 2-day wave of news and reports that's going to fly around everywhere. But let's know what you guys think about this trade deadline for the Raptors. Ryker, you have any last words?
No, sir, but let's hope we make something interesting happen at the trade deadline, Ben.
For sure. Cheers.